BRRR Explained, or at least how I'm going to make it work for me in 2024. And there's some tips for you that you can pick up as well. Let's discuss. Right, so in this video, I am going to run through and explain a few practical tips, tricks. So this is all going to be based on my past experience and things that I've been doing, and it's going to be based on a practical, real-life example, the past projects that I've been doing, and it's going to discuss some of the mistakes that I've made so that you don't have to. So it's going to form like a multiple-step, almost guide to BRRR. So this first video is just going to be a overview, so to speak, so BRRR in general, and then I'm going to do a separate video on each of the steps, and then I'm going to put it all together on a playlist and pop it on my channel, because I've had a couple of questions on each of these steps, so hopefully that will address some of the questions that you have. If you've got any more questions, just pop those in the comment box, and be sure to subscribe so you can see the full playlist. So BRRR is literally just an acronym that people use for a certain property investing strategy. So it stands for buy, refurbish, refinance and rent. You could also make it 4-step with the R's. You could also add repeat on the end as well, because if you're anything like me, you want to be doing another property and another property and basically just recycling your initial deposit, which is what I've been doing. And as I said, this series is going to document how you actually do that, or how I'm doing that, and some of the tricks that I'm using to adapt it for this year. So this is a way to maximise your returns and also minimise the amount of money that you've got left in a deal in order to move on to the next property deal that you might see. So you just basically go in and recycling that initial deposit over and over so that you just end up building up a portfolio over time. So we'll start with the B, which stands for buy. So you've got to acquire the right property. So when using this method, your success criteria really does depend on how well you've brought and how much research you've done and how well you've prepared to set yourself up in the first place. So what I'd suggest you do is, I've got a playlist on the channel already on this, is just make sure you have a property avatar so you know exactly what you want to do with your property journey, where you want to be at certain stages and certain years within your property journey, and then you can flip that around to make sure that you purchase and you're buying a property that's going to fulfill all of those needs. So once you've done that, you need to make sure that you've run all of your numbers. You know exactly what ROI you're going to be getting from a certain property, what ROI you're actually aiming to achieve, and how you're going to do this, and whether you're going to do this by adding value. As I said, what I do is I normally purchase a property that does need adding value, so it will need modernising, it'll need at least a new kitchen, new bathroom, a total modernisation all the way through. So I'm adding my value through that way, and that's the amount of profit that I want to pull out at the end of the deal. And I'm also trying to negotiate and buy the property for a decent enough price in the first place as well, so I'm building even more profit in from the beginning. So you've also got to really have your end value in sight throughout during this stage. So you're making sure that you are buying intentionally, so you're buying in accordance with your property criteria or your property avatar, and you're also buying and negotiating a price that's actually going to build in even more profit before you even begin to look into adding value and modernising a property. And another part of the work that you're going to be doing up front as well is looking at local trends. So you need to decide whether you're going to be a remote investor or whether you're going to be investing around where you live. So you need to know the local market where you're planning to invest. You need to know that inside out so that you know the market trend, you know which areas are good to buy in, you know what return you're going to likely to be getting, so you know what you're going to be getting per calendar month depending on what type of property you're going to be purchasing. So the numbers right up front are really important before you even start looking on Rightmove or any of these places for a deal. That's if you are looking through Rightmove and if you're not doing a sort of direct vendor deal. So you need to actually know all of your numbers up front. And obviously when we get to the next video within this series, it's going to literally be breaking down each of the steps step by step. So the next step after this, I'm going to be breaking down the buy part, and we'll go through how I source a deal, what I look for, and I'll actually do it on a real life example. So stay tuned for that. So now we're going to go on to the next stage, which is the renovate or the refurbish stage. And this is where we're actually practically adding the value to the property, either doing a full renovation or refurbishment and modernisation of that property. You may also be thinking to do a complete reconfiguration. You might be moving around the rooms, you might be adding another room, you might be doing an extension. All of this obviously you need to have thought about in the first stage of the B stage of this process. So when you're going into this stage, you really need to know exactly what your costs are going to be, how much your costs are going to be for the renovations, what actual tasks you are going to be carrying out. And if you look in the description box below, there is a link to a free project plan that's in Excel that I use, and it actually has a specification in there, or a scope of works, or some people call it a specification sheet. And this is exactly what you want him to do from the property. So you're going to have in there listed, if you're doing a new kitchen, it'll be the new kitchen plus the cost. It'll have in there the new bathroom plus the cost, what type of kitchen it's going to be, or the kitchen fittings, what it's going to be. It's going to be supply and install and fit. All of those things are going to be detailed in there. So, and you can either get this, if you're not that familiar with it, you can also ask and call around some of the local builders, get them to quote for you, and their quote will have an actual itemised bill of what they're actually going to be doing, when they're going to be doing it, things like that. So you really need to know at the first stage what you're actually going to be doing with the property, what you're actually trying to achieve, everything, all of that written out and detailed in your spec sheet, as well as how long it's going to take you to do it. So that's going to be what we generally call a program. You need to make sure that that's all done and detailed before you begin. By the way, my name's Sabrina, and welcome to the channel if you're new here. On this channel, I just share all of my tips and tricks and things that I've done for my property journey so far. You also need to have built in all of your risk items. Again, when we get to this stage, I'll actually go through in more detail what this is going to be, what this is going to entail, but you're going to list out any risk items. For example, if you think that you need a new roof, you're going to pop in new roof, and you're going to allocate a set amount to that, so that you've got that there separate to your contingency should you need it, or should if you don't need it. So then the next stage will be the actual refinance part, and this is going to be where you find a new refinance lender to actually take you from being on, if you, depending on how you've set up your purchasing of the property. So if you have brought via a bridge loan, this is the stage where you find a new lender with cheaper rates, so that you come off the higher rates bridge loan, and then you move on to a cheaper rate for your buy-to-let portion. So if you've opted for a bridge to let, this is basically a two-stage process where you basically go from a bridge loan and then onto a buy-to-let loan, and most of the time it's using the same lender, so it's almost in two stages. So I try to go for buy-to-let or bridge-to-lets, where the second part, so it's between 25% and 30% deposit usually. So for that new sort of mortgage term or mortgage funding term to start, the lender will normally instruct a valuer. They'll come out and they'll value the property, and they'll look at that compared against the initial scope of works that you've handed through to them. They will check that you've done everything that you've said you're going to do, and it's done at a high quality. And the main things that they're looking for is that the property is habitable, so it's having a working kitchen, and how nice that working kitchen is, and it's having a working bathroom, things like your heating systems as well, that can boost your valuation, or anything that you've done to improve the energy efficiency of a property. For example, you can do a whole new thermal upgrade on the internal of the external walls, which will save money for whoever goes in there to rent. That will save them money on their heating bills. Maybe there's a sudden boost in the properties in the local area, something like that. A survey will come and look at that, and then they will recommend to the lender, yes, this is a sound investment for you to secure this mortgage funding against. If you've had planning permissions as well, all things like that come into play too. And then you're on to the last R, which stands for rent, and that's what it says on the tin. Basically, you're going to get someone to come in and rent the property for a certain amount each month. And then the next R, to repeat. So you just do that again, pull your money back out, and then purchase another property, and the process starts again, so you can hopefully recycle that deposit and recycle the funds as well. If you're adding value, recycle that, the renovation cost money as well. And that's why it's so important to make sure that you budget correctly in the first place, and B, you make sure that you monitor your budget all the way through the refit, so that you don't overspend, or if you do overspend, you mitigate against risk as much as possible, so that when you do come to pull the money back out, you've still got that deposit that you can recycle, and also the funds to do up the property as well. So for example, and this is a very high level example of that, if you have, say, a 3-bed property and you've purchased it for around, let's say, 300k, then you're going to have a 25% deposit, which should be around £75,000. And then say fees and stamp duties around £20,000 payable. So that means that our total cash outlay would be roughly around £95,000, and we would have a loan or mortgage loan of about 225,000. So then once we've gone through the purchase and everything and we own the property, then need to do a refurbishment and add a value to that property. And let's assume that maybe we do an extension for, I don't know, £105,000, for example. We would actually need to fund that, or maybe we could get this funded via a bridge loan. So after the building works are completed and everything's all done and it's all refurbished, let's say we get the property revalued and it gets revalued at 500k, and at this point we could sell at 500k, repay back the bank loan and the bridge loan, and then we could be left with a profit of around £50,000, so to speak. So what are your feelings on this? I hope you found the video useful. Please like, comment and subscribe, and remember, watch this video next where you can see a few more details and a few more property investing tips, and that's using a real life example, by the way, so stay tuned and we'll go into that in more detail. Thanks, bye.